Okay, continuing on with Chapter 3, second part of Chapter 3. There are 4 areas of corporate social responsibility, CSR, 4 areas of corporate social responsibility. There is responsibility towards the environment, which we're going to look at in more detail, responsibility towards customers, responsibility towards employees, and finally, responsibility towards investors. Now, how much money a company or an organization spends on corporate social responsibility is a trade-off between profits and what's right. There are some business managers that are far left and some that are far right. The ones that are far left would say that all profits belong to the owners and the shareholders of a company, and corporate social responsibility be damned. On the other side of that argument would be groups that say that all the profits belong back into the environment and the community and so on. One group says to hell with all that, it belongs to the company's owners, its shareholders. The other side says everything should be spent on corporate social responsibility. In real life, there is a balance. Now, first let's look at corporate social responsibility towards the environment. And this area actually includes 3 types of environmental pollution: air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution. Climate change is well discussed, falls under air pollution. Climate change is well discussed, and we know that it definitely occurs. It's very well debated. Probably that guy, his name begins with the T, south of the border, he may not believe in climate change, but all the rest of us do. Water pollution got to do with the water quality and improving water quality. As you may know, dumping at sea is highly illegal and is regulated now. One time anybody could dump at sea, but now it's highly regulated. Land pollution has to do with the contamination of grounds and soil due to dumping toxic waste and mishandling of landfills. The key issues with land pollution, there's 2. One is curbing and reducing that pollution, and the second part is restoring the contaminated lands. In St. John's, on the west side of the harbor, we have the sewage treatment plant, which treats all sewer that we used to just throw into the harbor. So yes, I guess we're curbing sewer into the harbor by using that treatment plant to process it. But we haven't done anything about cleaning up the harbor. That hasn't even been discussed yet, I don't think. There's many acts of corporate social responsibility towards the environment that are regulated, but there's lots of others that are proactively taken by businesses, like recycling their garbage, biodegradable packaging, and so on. A lot of businesses try to do a little bit extra when it comes to the environment, carbon footprint, being green, that sort of thing. Okay, the next one I want to look at is corporate social responsibility towards customers. There are 3 areas in this case. The first one is the rights of consumers, which is called consumerism or social activism. I will actually come back to that. Unfair pricing, which can hurt consumers. There's 2 types of unfair pricing. There's collusion, and the second one is gouging. Collusion is price fixing. It's when companies go together and they collude or they fix their price. Companies agree that, no, I'm going to charge this, you should charge this too, and then we'll both make lots of money. That's price fixing or collusion. The oil companies and the airlines have been charged with collusion. Gouging is increasing prices in times of shortages. Increases in milk prices and gas are not easily tolerated in Canada because we have consumer advocates who watch and make everybody aware of what's happening with those prices. The third area is ethics in advertising, and there's 4 areas to look at here. The first one is truth in advertising. Advertising in Canada has to be truthful. It can't be a lie. It has to be the truth. I cannot say that this shampoo is going to make your hair thick. I can say this shampoo is going to give you more volume. That is, help the hair you got look like it has more volume. It's not going to make your hair thicker. I can't say that this cream is going to make you look 10 years younger. But I can say this cream will give you a more youthful appearance. The second one is advertising of counterfeit brands or knockoffs. It's illegal in Canada to possess a knockoff, and it is illegal to advertise knockoffs. The third category is morally objectionable advertising. And morally objectionable advertising is advertising that consumers consider wrong, like ads to kids for tobacco, youth for liquor. Tobacco and liquor advertising is extremely well regulated in North America, maybe not so much elsewhere. Now there is a fourth category here, which is not on this slide, but I want to put here for you. And that's sleaze advertising. And sleaze advertising is undercover advertising. And that's when you do advertising, but you don't really say that you're working for that company. Sony and Canon have both been charged with sleaze advertising.
Stealth.
Sleaze.
Stealth.
Canon had employees work in the area around the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Those employees were like, take my picture with my camera, and my, that's a really nice camera. Yes, they're on sale, store over there. That's undercover advertising, which is not acceptable. Okay, I promised to come back to the rights of consumers, or consumerism, or social activism, which protects the rights to consumers. In particular, the basic consumer rights are the rights to safe products, the right to be informed about a product, the right to be heard, the right to choose, the right to be educated, and the right to courteous service. Please note that the right to a fair price is not here. The right to a fair price is up to the consumer to find. You go out and find your own fair price, shop around, and so on. Okay, the third area of corporate social responsibility, moving right along, is towards employees. And here we're looking at areas specifically like human resource management issues. It's important to provide equal opportunity for employees, safe workplace, no abuse. We'll cover those kind of issues in the HR chapters 7 and 8. There are social responsibility issues towards employees, which can be very basic, like accommodating disabilities, and there can be higher level needs like child care, elder care. Privacy issue includes drug testing, computer monitoring. Air Canada pilots are randomly tested for drugs. They know they're going to be randomly tested for drugs. When I was at the bank, my computer was monitored. I knew my computer was monitored. I didn't checkout sites that I shouldn't be on at work because I knew it was monitored. And finally, whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are employees who call attention to unethical, irresponsible, or illegal activities in an organization. There is legislation in Canada to protect whistleblowers. A whistleblower brought down Enron. A female RCMP officer actually blew the whistle on a lot of things that were happening within the RCMP in Canada. The final area of corporate social responsibility is towards investors. And there are specific areas to look at here, like improper financial management. You can get rid of kiting checks because the banking systems are so fast these days you can no longer kite checks, so let's not talk about that. We will talk about insider trading and misrepresentation of finances. Okay, improper financial management can take many forms, and it's very unethical and wrong. By definition, improper financial management is doing a poor job of managing the financial resources of a company or organization. Conrad Black did a terrible job looking after Hollinger. He paid himself lavish, high salaries. He had expense accounts. He took his wife and all her friends by jet to Bora Bora for her 50th birthday. Oh, he charged up a whole lot that was considered unethical, wrong, and he actually went to jail for it. The Canadian senator scandal is another example of improper financial management. There was no real code book in place, and those senators charged up whatever they felt like. Now, here's a really good point. It may be legally unpunishable because no law has been broken, which is essentially what happened with the Canadian senators. There was charges brought against several of them, but it didn't stick because there really wasn't any clear rule book, and so it became unpunishable. I had a subordinate that worked for me and took a customer golfing, and they went in the clubhouse afterwards and they drank about 20 beers. And they charged it all up to the bank, including the taxis home and whatnot. And I don't know, it was $250 or whatever it was. And it wasn't, it was unethical, but it wasn't legally improper. I chastised that employee and said, don't charge up 20 beers to the bank anymore. And it never did happen again. Improper financial management is no longer tolerated in society. The board of directors that governs an organization is in place to ensure that it doesn't happen. The board of directors that sits on top of a business, they're looking down with a microscope and they're protecting the interests of shareholders. I promised to talk about check kiting, forget that. I promised to talk about insider trading because it is highly illegal. And in class, I always say, who went to jail? Who do you know that went to jail for insider trading? And you always get it right. So I know you're home now watching this video and you're getting it right. And that'd be Martha Stewart. And poor Martha is a billionaire. And I shouldn't put poor and billionaire in the same sentence. Anyway, Martha the billionaire went to jail, not because she herself did anything wrong. Her stockbroker passed her on a tip that she should not have got. Her crime was acting on the tip. She had $50,000 worth of shares in a company, and that company's patent was going to be not renewed. Her stockbroker told her that, and she was like, sell my shares. She should have hung up the phone on him. He went to jail too, much longer than she did, and he lost his stockbrokering license and abilities for the rest of his life. But she acted on a tip she should never have got, and that was her crime. Misrepresentation of finances and financial statements is illegal and serious. To avoid such activities, companies must conform to accounting guidelines and principles called GAAP. And GAAP stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. I can read a set of financial statements even if they're in a foreign language because I understand the GAAP rules, and financial statements are laid out to a standard of care, consistent and standardized right across the world. Hopefully companies in the future will not be hurt by financial statements the way we've seen in the past. Since the 1990s and the huge Enron bankruptcy, the standards of care have been much higher. Okay, this is an extremely important slide. Don't really look like there's a lot on it, but it's an extremely important slide. As I've already indicated, corporate social responsibility and the amount of money that you spend on corporate social responsibility is top management's decision. And some will say that it hurts profits and the investors and they don't want to spend any. Others argue that it doesn't matter and it should take precedent over profits. There are 4 basic approaches to corporate social responsibility. You can say there's 4 stances or 4 approaches, or there's 4 places that you can sit on the spectrum. The first one is the obstructionalist stance. And the obstructionalist stance is the lowest level of corporate responsibility. Up from that is the defensive stance, then is the accommodative stance, and the highest level of corporate social responsibility is the proactive stance. So the lowest level of corporate social responsibility to the highest level. Companies that are here in the obstructionalist stance do whatever they want. They don't care. Enron was there. They have no regard for corporate social responsibility. They will hide wrongdoing. They do whatever they can do. One up from that, the defensive stance, companies that are here in the defensive stance do everything they got to do. They don't do anything extra. They only do what they're legally required to do. Managers in the defensive stance would insist that their job is to increase profits. They're not going to break any laws, but they're not going to do anything extra. The tobacco companies domestically are here in the defensive stance. They do what they got to, but they're not doing anything else. Next up, the accommodative stance. Companies that are here, they meet all legal and ethical requirements. They may even do more if they're convinced to do more. If a pitch gets made to them, they know what they can do extra, they'll do it. But they meet all legal and ethical responsibility, and they may even do more if they're convinced to do it. And finally, the highest level of corporate social responsibility, the proactive stance, seeks opportunities to be proactive. Companies that set up foundations and support programs would be in the proactive stance. Now, I want to discuss a couple of examples. McDonald's. Tell me where McDonald's is on this spectrum. And I'll get various answers. And some of you will say they're defensive, and some of you will say they're proactive and whatnot. I actually put McDonald's in 2 categories. I put McDonald's here when it comes to their food. They do what they got to do. They haven't cut down on the salt. They haven't cut down on the fat. They're still supersized, and they try to encourage you to buy supersized. But I also put McDonald's here with the Ronald McDonald House, the little kid program, sponsoring the hockey, and so on. So I actually put McDonald's in two categories. When I was a commercial banker and looked after the fish plants in Newfoundland, and I traveled around to do so, I actually used to see the salt outdoors, and the salt was road grade salt, that dirty gray salt. It was outdoors in a big pile, and I would see rodents jumping through it, and I'd see the seagulls pitching on it, and then I'd see a dirty old rusty forklift come out and take a big heap and bring it in the fish plant and put it on the dirty concrete floor, and then I'd see people with a shovel shoveling it on fish, and I would think, oh my God, that is disgusting. The seafood processors were here. Like, they didn't care what they did. They didn't care that it was trampled on by rats and pooed on by seagulls. They didn't care about any of that. They were here. And they didn't care what they bought. They bought road grade salt because it was cheap. Now, after I left the bank, I found out that the fish processors were no longer allowed to have that salt outdoors. They had to house it indoors. It had to be in 100-pound bags contained, and it had to be housed in a warehouse or indoors. Now, that got rid of the seagulls and the rats and so on. They came here legally. They were here doing what they wanted. They came to here because the government made them. They could have took it a step further and bought food-grade salt. But no, they're driven by profits, and they came as far as this. Okay, we're almost finished Chapter 3. Almost. There's other ways that business help in terms of corporate donations. When there's a disaster, companies donate food, water, diapers, drugs. Some of you may have been in Junior Achievement. Junior Achievement, I was an advisor for years in Junior Achievement. It's made up of business volunteers. Okay, finally, last slide. I'm skipping over a couple of slides and I'm going to 26. Okay, corporate social responsibility and small business. You may be wondering, like, this may all sound like what big business does. What does small business do? Small business faces exactly the same issues as large business. Certainly, small business doesn't have the people resources or the money resources of large organizations, but small business can do a proportionate amount according to their budget. They do what they can afford. Likely what happens with small business is they take on the ethical and social behavior of the owners. Okay, you've been a great class for Chapter 3. Thank you.